Have you ever wondered how one nation, united under the same flag, could divide so violently, leading to the deadliest war in its history? A war of brother against brother, a war that would define the destiny of a nation. This was no ordinary conflict. This, my friends, was the American Civil War, an event shrouded in the complexities of politics, society, and human nature itself. Today we delve into the chronicles of the American Civil War, a battle that would forever change the face of a nation. Our story begins in the mid-19th century, a time of significant discord and tension. The United States, still young and forging its identity, found itself caught in a web of conflicting interests and ideologies. At the heart of this conflict lay the institution of slavery, a contentious issue that divided the nation along geographical lines. The northern states, with their growing industrial economy, were moving away from reliance on slavery. They favoured a strong central government and championed free labour. The southern states, however, with their agrarian economy, heavily relied on the institution of slavery. They advocated for states' rights, arguing that each state should have the right to decide the legality of slavery within its borders. Key events during this period further fanned the flames of conflict. The Missouri Compromise of 1820, for example, admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, maintaining the delicate balance in Congress. However, this balance was disrupted by the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed these territories to decide the issue of slavery through popular sovereignty. This led to a violent struggle known as Bleeding Kansas, a grim foreshadowing of the conflict to come. As these tensions simmered, the nation found itself on the precipice of a great divide. The ideological, economic and political differences were becoming insurmountable. And so, the stage was set for a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the United States. The spark that ignited the war came in April of 1861 at a place named Fort Sumter. Off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina, this fort would become the stage for a crucial event in American history. Confederate forces, hungry for a symbol of their newfound sovereignty, decided to flex their military muscle. They demanded the surrender of Fort Sumter, a Union stronghold in the heart of the South. The Union commander, Major Robert Anderson, stood firm, refusing to cede the fort. In response, Confederate artillery opened fire in the early morning hours of April 12th. For 34 grueling hours, the fort was bombarded. Despite the intensity of the attack, no lives were lost during the battle. However, the Union forces, outnumbered and outgunned, were eventually forced to surrender. This conflict marked the first exchange of fire in what would become a long and bloody war. With the first shots fired, the American Civil War had begun. By 1863, a decisive battle was fought on the fields of Gettysburg, turning the tides of war. It was a three-day clash that would write itself into the annals of history as one of the most significant battles of the American Civil War. Let's set the stage. The year was 1863, 2 years into the bloody conflict. The Confederate Army, under the leadership of General Robert E. Lee, was feeling confident after a series of victories. They decided to invade the North, hoping to force the Union into negotiating for peace. Their target? The small but strategically located town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Over the course of 3 grueling days, from July 1st to 3rd, Union and Confederate forces clashed in what would become the war's bloodiest battle. The Union Army, led by General George G. Meade, fought with a tenacity that matched the Confederates' resolve. The battle saw several pivotal moments, but none more so than Pickett's charge. On the 3rd day, a desperate Lee ordered a massive infantry assault against the center of the Union lines. It was a gamble, one that ultimately failed. The Union forces held their ground, repelling the Confederate attack and inflicting heavy casualties. The aftermath of Gettysburg was staggering. An estimated 51,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing. The Confederates had suffered a significant blow, both in terms of manpower and morale. Lee's invincibility was shattered, and the South's hope for a swift victory faded. But the Battle of Gettysburg was more than just a military turning point. It was a symbolic one. It was here that President Abraham Lincoln would later deliver his famous Gettysburg Address, transforming the war from a fight for the Union into a struggle for human freedom. Yet, while Gettysburg marked a turning point in the war, it did not mark its end. The Confederacy was far from defeated, and the Union had a long road ahead. The war would rage on for another 2 years, bringing with it more bloodshed and heartbreak. Gettysburg marked a turning point, but the war was far from over. In 1865, the weary nation saw the end of the conflict at a place called Appomattox Courthouse. Imagine the scene. It's April, spring is creeping in, but the chill of a long winter and an even longer war still lingers. General Robert E. Lee, a man who had been at the forefront of the Confederacy's fight, arrives at the McLean House in the village of Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. His counterpart, General Ulysses S. Grant of the Union, waits for him. The tension is palpable. This is a meeting that will echo through the annals of history. Lee, ever the gentleman, arrives in full military regalia, while Grant, the pragmatist, is in a mud-splattered uniform. The contrast between them is stark, but their goal is the same: an end to the bloodshed. They exchange pleasantries and then get down to business. Grant, gracious in potential victory, offers lenient terms. Soldiers are allowed to return home with their horses for spring planting. Officers can keep their sidearms. There will be no prosecutions for treason. Lee accepts. It's a moment of profound relief and profound sadness. The Civil War, a brutal 4-year-long struggle that has torn the nation apart, is effectively over. Yet, as Lee rides away from Appomattox Courthouse, he carries with him not just the weight of defeat, but the burden of a nation's healing. With the surrender at Appomattox, the Civil War was over, but the nation's struggle was only beginning. In the aftermath of this devastating war, a nation sought to rebuild and heal. The American Civil War had left a deep and indelible mark on the nation's psyche. Yet, out of the ashes of this tumultuous conflict emerged an era known as Reconstruction. Reconstruction was not just about rebuilding physical structures, it was about redefining the very fabric of American society. The 13th, 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, colloquially referred to as the Reconstruction Amendments, were introduced during this period. They laid the groundwork for a more equitable nation. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, finally putting an end to an institution that had been a contentious issue since the founding of the nation. The 14th Amendment conferred citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former enslaved people, and guaranteed equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment then prohibited the government from denying a citizen the right to vote based on that citizen's race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Yet, the path to rebuilding was not without its obstacles. Southern states implemented black codes, laws designed to restrict the rights of newly freed African Americans and maintain a semblance of pre-war racial hierarchy. The North and South grappled with their own economic and political challenges, while the nation as a whole struggled to reconcile the ideals of freedom and equality with the realities of prejudice and discrimination. But through these trials and tribulations, the United States began to stitch itself back together. The Reconstruction era was a time of significant social, political and constitutional change. It was a time of hope, of progress, of struggle and of resilience. Despite the scars of war, the United States emerged stronger, slowly stitching together a divided nation. The journey was arduous, the road was long, but the nation pushed forward, driven by the unwavering belief in the promise of a better tomorrow. The legacy of the Civil War is not only in its battles and its soldiers, but in the nation it shaped. The Civil War, a bloody and transformative period in American history, was a crucible that tested the mettle of a nation and reforged it anew. The roots of the conflict lay in deep-seated tensions between the North and the South, the echoes of which can still be heard today. These tensions ignited a war that started with the Battle of Fort Sumter, a conflict that set the stage for a grueling 4-year battle for the soul of a nation. The turning point came at the Battle of Gettysburg, a 3-day clash that proved to be the deadliest of the war and a decisive victory for the Union. This marked a shift in momentum, leading to the eventual surrender at the Appomattox Courthouse and the end of the war. But the end of the war was not the end of the story. The Reconstruction period that followed was a time of rebuilding and healing, a time to mend the wounds of a divided nation and to lay the foundation for the America we know today. The legacy of the Civil War is one of courage, sacrifice, and resilience. It serves as a stark reminder of a time when the nation was torn apart by conflict, but also of the power of unity and the strength of a nation determined to heal. Over 150 years later, the echoes of the Civil War still resonate, a testament to a nation's struggle and its enduring resilience.